This time, Argentina, World Cup 78. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
No, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to by far the greatest team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the impossible to rank once and for all who is the greatest team of all time. My name's Graham Dunn, as ever, stating the case for Oxford United, and our stats man in the corner, it's Jamie Rooney.
So I guess Shane is looking at me thinking, what the hell is that all about? That's the theme tune to World Cup 78. And I think if we're starting World Cup 78, we need the BBC theme tune, written by none other than Andrew Lloyd Webber. Yeah. Argentine.
Oh, yes.
Argentine Melody, it's called, and Andrew Lloyd Webber. And I think we've got to start off this one on a high note, because we just don't know how many other high notes we're going to encounter as we go through and trawl through this story.
I'm surprised that we didn't go with Darth Vader's entrance in Star Wars, the first one, but nonetheless.
That's a good shout.
Do you know,
that would have been around about the time as well, yeah.
I'm ahead of you there, Jamie. I did look it up because I was thinking, oh, this is perfect. The film came... No, the film's 77, isn't it? Film was 77. Otherwise, that was where I was going. Because this story really is like the dark side and the Jedis, with the Argentina siding with Darth Vader and pitted against, of all teams, the Luke Skywalker, the Jedis of Holland themselves. And it is an incredible World Cup, incredible story. As ever, we always try and bring this guy on whenever it's a slightly random or borderline story. So welcome back, Shane Guiliano.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate being parachuted into what can only be considered yet another car crash in sporting history. It is quite a magnificent one, this one. I mean, and it's one where you'd be hard pressed to work out who to believe. There is so much angst swirling around whether this was legit or not. It's farcical. The stories make Marseille look like a Saturday league game for an under-5 team.
Well, I've just realised, of course, that actually, in a bit of clever organising, planning, and strategy from our side, this does mean you have been on sequentially in World Cups, because, of course, you did the World Cup 70. Oh, was this 74? Was 74?
Yeah,
Zaire.
74, yeah.
So we have covered World Cup 74. We've also, in fairness, for full disclosure, we covered World Cup 78 before. The two teams you've chosen are Zaire and Scotland. So I'm not sure we've really hit the heights.
No, you haven't given me the greatest team ever lived, that's for sure. Where we end up with this one's going to be fascinating to argue and get to the bottom of. I mean, fascinating.
What we've got here as well, I mean, we've gone absolute countless episodes without any mention to our favourite sports documentary, Escape to Victory. And then last week with the brilliant Mark Horrocks, we covered Escape to Victory because the Ipswich Town team are fundamental to the film. Russell Osman has a line, Kevin Beattie and John Walk and co. And then this time we've got Kazi Dana, who's in the film. And of course, the miracle of a player, Osvaldo Ardiles, who's an absolute star performer in Escape to Victory. However, I don't think that's going to be the prime topic of discussion.
Didn't even make it onto the research notes, which is pretty incredible. So, I mean, what goes to make this story so bizarre is obviously that it is held 1978, Argentina, which it's fair to say it had a pretty up and down period of rule over the previous 20 years or so. But by the time we get to 1978, there's a military junta leading the country in quite a, not just quite a nasty one, particularly nasty one. Jamie, this isn't on the cards, is it? Because is it like a decade earlier they get picked to host the tournament?
Yeah, so through the normal channels of being awarded it by the FIFA committee, but it wasn't straightforward. They originally expected to be hosting the World Cup in 1938, when FIFA had agreed with South America and Europe that the World Cup would rotate. The first one was in Uruguay, and the second one was in Europe, and then the third one should have gone to Argentina, but it didn't. It went to Europe, and France hosted the 38 World Cup. And then they missed out on the World Cup in 1950. They missed out on the World Cup in 1962, which went to Chile, which again, Argentina were thinking that they would be the host. And then in 1966, FIFA decided to award the next 3 World Cups to each host. Now, Argentina were banking on 1970, the next one after the 1966 World Cup in England. But that went to Mexico, as we know, and the brilliant Brazilians won that. So Argentina ended up with the 1978 World Cup. So the 74, 78 and 82 World Cup were all awarded at the same time in 1966. And this was a period where Argentina was going through a bit of a change of regime. And it was probably just a precursor to what was going to lie ahead by the time we got to the summer, or should I say winter, of 1978, as it would have been in Argentina at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a show. I mean, so you can have a lot of water travels under the bridge over sort of 12 years or so from the point of picking the team. And FIFA in those days could have no expectation as to what kind of regime would be in Argentina at that point. Fortunately, these days, they may, when they give it to Russia, they probably know. But anyway.
Yes, correct.
So Argentina, before we get into the regime, which we should talk about, at this stage, going into 78, are Argentina a big side? They've obviously not won the tournament before. It's difficult to imagine Argentina not being one of the immediate favourites, as they have been pretty much for every World Cup in my lifetime. But is this credible?
By 1978, I think it would be fair to say that Argentina are a guest at the big table of international football, but they're not getting first dibs on, the food that's coming out. They're not being able to pick the starters. It's being picked for them and the mains. So they're kind of almost like the second-class citizens at this particular point at the dinner table. They've won a few South American international cups, the Copa America, and they're kind of rallied with Brazil and Uruguay for those titles. World Cup-wise, they've not really done anything special since they reached the final in 1930. They got to the quarterfinals in 1966, lost out to England. They didn't qualify for 1970, and they were absolutely trounced by the Dutch in 1974. So by 78, the idea of Argentina being a world force in international football is still just that.
So we get to 1978, which tournament-wise is relatively conventional. I think it's the last with 16 teams, isn't it? But Argentina itself is anything but conventional at that stage.
Well, there's that obvious small problem of a military dictatorship at the time, which, let's just say you've got a small problem when people go missing. And when I say people go missing, when you get 15 to 30,000 people go missing, that casts a small shadow over the legitimacy of the host nation. My understanding is they got a clean bill of health to be able to run the World Cup, which was absolutely, well, maybe it's surprising yet not surprising, depending on how they got the clean bill of health. General Georges Videla is a seriously nasty man, and his parties are reasonably nasty people. It's, torture, murder. It's an unpleasant read. Who wouldn't want to have a World Cup there?
But it isn't totally out of keeping with the type of stuff that's going on at the time. And obviously, in amongst the Cold War and amongst US paranoia or otherwise, whether it's paranoia or not, around communism, quite often the US view was, well, a dictator's better than a communist. So it's not that unusual. And it is underlined that Henry Kissinger is a guest and quite seems to lap it up.
Kissinger backs the military takeover as well. So he's behind that. He's giving, he's the US Secretary of State at the time, and he backs the move for the military to take control of Argentina, to oust the president, Isabel Perón, who'd taken over because she was vice president when her husband, Juan Perón, who plays a fairly significant part in the World Cup because the logo is his symbol.
Mm.
And it's worth talking about that at some point as well. But yeah, Kissinger himself, he's backing up this military dictatorship. And also, I mean,
So it's
FIFA
easy-
are complicit in all this. FIFA know what's going on, which again, we can probably pick that apart at some point.
I mean, you're absolutely right. They know what's going on, but equally, it's not that odd, if you see what I mean. So, I mean, they're not that out of step with lots of other people, including Henry Kissinger and the American regime, in sort of turning a blind eye to it. Now, I think probably what they couldn't have factored in is, within 2 years, then taking just how brutal that particular regime would be. And also, well, in fact, they could have second-guessed it because it's happened previously, but the extent to which the Argentine military regime would use that for popular appeal and, to champion their regime in the country. Which, we have seen, the Olympics in Germany in the Nazi era. It's not to be surprised that maybe regimes might use this.
It's a well-trodden historical play to use a sporting event to garner favouritism on a global scale. Absolutely. And to justify and almost advertise how reasonable you are as a nation in the first place and how normal everything's going.
I guess what's interesting, there are genuine campaigns and pressure for there to be some kind of boycott of this by a sporting boycott. The Dutch, I think, come under a lot of pressure. I think there's a amnesty campaign, blood on the crossbar or something like that. It was cool. But when you look at it back, there are two players who don't go amid that. The really high profile are Johan Cruyff and Paul Breitner. But Cruyff, it's a little bit more complicated, isn't it? I mean, it's not actually a boycott as such.
There was a kidnapping attempt, wasn't there, just a few months before the World Cup?
Yeah, in Barcelona, Cruyff breaking at his house. He's tied up with his wife in front of the children. Feels his life is under threat, and probably feels a bit disillusioned with football after that event. After they come through that event unscathed from a family perspective, but mentally, it's definitely scarred him.
And it probably doesn't help that the World Cup is in, Argentina under a military regime at the time. It might be slightly different if it had been somewhere else, maybe.
I think it is a factor, actually. Probably not. I don't know what Cruyff's thinking was. And he doesn't really mention it I've read one of his books. I don't think he mentions it in there, but I think the proximity would definitely be in his thinking because Argentina is pretty much the other side of the world. And, he probably feels that he wants to protect his family, and the best way to do that is to probably be with his family 24/7. So maybe that has been part of his thinking. But I mean, there are doubts whether Cruyff didn't go to Argentina because of what was going on in Argentina and more what was probably going on in Johan Cruyff's life at that particular moment. But there was one player, Graham, who definitely didn't go to Argentina because of what was going on in Argentina, and that was the bearded wonder, Paul Breitner from West Germany.
Yeah, Paul Breitner, who I had newfound respect for, because I kind of remember him seeing him play in later years for West Germany, and I knew none of this kind of backstory about this kind of left-leaning, extremely principled in multiple ways. Though equally, I think if you put yourself out there, as Jordan Henderson has found, if you put yourself out there as a kind of embodiment, you can end up. And obviously, he in club football, he goes and plays up sticks from Germany, goes and plays for Real Madrid under Franco's regime. So, but he's the only player, certainly the only player who is publicised, boycotts and refuses to go. Although he basically doesn't play for West Germany for about a period of 4 or 5 years anyway, of which this is in the middle of it. I'm not quite sure how much of a loss he was because he hadn't regularly been playing anyway. But, it does show the depth of feeling because I'm not sure I can remember another player boycotting a World Cup in recent time.
No, and there's definitely been opportunities.
The World Cup's also famous for not a boycott of a famous player, but one other world-famous player not making it, only because the Argentinian Federation didn't think he could handle the world stage at the time. 17-year-old Diego Maradona, who I believe was playing for River Plate at the time, he couldn't get a Guernsey, and the guy who did get a Guernsey was Mr. Kempes ahead of him. So kind of worked quite well, but they may have misjudged just how good he could have been.
It does feel like that Manete kind of underestimated in an unusual way, because he actually worked a lot of his magic had come from working with young players. He had given young players an opportunity. So, Sven was more than happy to put his faith in a 17-year-old Theo Walcott. But Diego Maradona, as a 17-year-old, and it does say a lot for what a prodigious talent he was, that even as a 17-year-old, it was an issue. It was a real talking point, him leaving Maradona out of the squad.
And Menotti had given Maradona his international debut as well. And his reason and rationale was that he didn't think that Maradona was mentally and physically ready at that particular point. And I think there's an argument for that. And Shane, as you rightly said, I mean, it brings in Kempes. Kempes is the only player playing his football outside Argentina. He's playing for Valencia in Spain at the time. Everyone else is playing inside South America. And his faith in Kempes is restored, as we know, because Kempes absolutely starts pulling through and banging in the goals and goes on to win the Golden Boot as the latter stages of the tournament progress. And Maradona does go on and pretty much single-handedly wins the World Cup for Argentina 8 years later. I mean, there's not many players that can boast they've won the World Cup on their own, and Maradona pretty much does that. I don't think Menotti's judgment was rash. I think there was rationale because he was a very intellectual coach, pretty much ahead of his time, and a massive influence on a lot of managers we see now, like Diego Simeone will cite Menotti as one of his heroes in terms of his playing style.
We should talk about Menotti because he is a very interesting choice to lead Argentina in this World Cup. Pre the military junta, they're both the left and right wing Peronist movements have been major terrorism acts, but it is the right wing side under the military junta that wins through at this stage. So the left are being persecuted. So it is not obvious that you would pick a left-wing football manager to lead your country into such a publicity tool for you. Jamie, how did he wind up in the job?
Well, he was already quite a successful, well-known coach in Argentina in the early 70s. And after 74, it was considered a bit of a football crisis for the national team, and Menotti got the job after the World Cup. And so he was already in place once the military coup had kind of happened in 76. Menotti was there, and there may have been ideas to change him because he was a liberal. He was quite outspoken, completely opposite to what Videla was trying to achieve or what he was aiming to do in Argentina, but he was already there. And it's a bit like the Juan Perón symbol, the logo for the World Cup. That was already in place by the time that Vidal got to power, and he tried to change that. He literally tried to change it because he didn't like how it represented Perón, but he would have had like 100,000 lawsuits on his hands because that horse had already bolted, that ship had sunk, and that logo was baked in stone now. And I think he would have had too many lawsuits on his hands in order to get through to change that logo.
But he was a really iconic manager as well, mostly for his chain smoking, I think.
The slim one, that's what he was called. His black hair, his sideburns, and forever having a cigarette on the end of his mouth. I think smoking managers is quite sexy in football. I think the whole blanket ban on smoking now denies us one of those wonderful moments, because we all know that Ancelotti likes a puff. We all know that Pirlo likes a puff. I think having managers on the sideline with a cigarette from their mouth, a bit Andy Capp style, is something that football should really think about bringing back. Or maybe vaping these days.
To be fair, he's got a heck of a career, hasn't he? I mean, he's done the Claudio Ranieri, hasn't he? He's legitimately Claudio Ranieri, Roy Hodgson debates just popping up with him. He's travelled the globe. Got any miles that's going to get him around the world ticket.
Bizarrely though, he doesn't kind of go on and achieve greatness like he did in 78. Greatness. Yeah, he's a journeyman. He's well respected and I think appreciated by lots of up and coming coaches, and he's an influence on them. But yeah, he is a journeyman. He's your Claudio Ranieri. He's just a a well-respected manager hopping from job to job, contract to contract.
We should get a little bit into how that tournament unfolds. We've previously indulged ourselves in Scotland and Ali McLeod's glorious efforts, which ultimately were to fail against Holland. But Argentina, host nation, the structure of this tournament.
16 teams, 4 groups, 4 teams in each group. Top 2 qualify for a second group phase, where it's 2 groups of 4. Top 2 go to the final. Second places play in the third and fourth place. It was the second time that FIFA had employed this format, and it was the final time. I think you already referenced in Spain '82, we moved to 24 teams, and the format gets a proper shake-up.
And Argentina in a group, by today's standards, it looks quite tough, actually. A group with Hungary, France, and Italy. You know, France, they have Platini at that stage. They're maybe not the force that they were, but France and Italy always strong sides. So that feels like that is going to be not a straightforward group to get out of. They start off with a couple of wins, don't they?
They do start off with a couple of wins, and it's kind of like this point where you look back on it and you're looking for any evidence that they're getting any assistance. And it's hard to say. There is they beat Hungary 2-1, late goal. They beat France 2-1. And there's a suspicion of a penalty that France should have had but don't get. But there's nothing obvious at this particular state to say that the team are getting any outside assistance. I haven't watched all of the games back, so I would defer to Shane in whether he's picked up anything in his research.
A lot of my research was based on the joy of the Peruvian game, which I'm still giggling over. And when we get to it, I'll giggle over it a fair bit more too, because it's an absolute peach, to be perfectly frank. But there was a fantastic quote in the box in the France game, and I don't remember what the quote was, but it was a slight quote from one of the Argentinians to the French people, something along, "Geez, I hope you get out of here. I hope you get out of here okay." And I don't think it was a reference to the game, and I think it was far more of a reference to the box itself. And that pretty much undermines everything that went on in the World Cup. I hope you get out of here okay, with a wink.
There was also in that game as well, when France felt they should have had a penalty. I mean, as with everything in this particular World Cup, most of it is circumstantial. There's not a lot that you can actually prove with any shadow of a doubt. But one of the French players has been quoted saying that he heard the referee say to an Argentinian defender who just fouled a French player in the box, "If you do that again, I'm going to have to give a penalty next time."
And that quote was brilliant too. Yes, I read that. That's fantastic.
Argentina are going through this stage. It's Luque who is really getting the goals for them. Mario Kempes, which we'll come on to in a second. It's a very quiet start from him. Probably quite a turning point in it, and particularly for Kempes, because actually Argentina lose they've already qualified by this stage, I assume, but they lose their last game to Italy, which means rather than playing their home matches in Buenos Aires, they go to Rosario, is it? Is it Rosario?
Yeah,
As in Robert Rosario?
That's the very same. I think Rosario in Argentina is named after Robert Rosario.
Yeah, I would desperately hope so. I think quite a few sort of commentators and writers on the topic see this as quite a positive for Argentina, because it takes them out of the glare of Buenos Aires on the one hand. It's certainly a positive for Mario Kempes. He's obviously played for the last 2 years in Valencia and been the top scorer there, but had previously played Rosario. So he's come back to his home. And it is worth saying that at this point, having got through after 3 games, Mario Kempes hasn't scored for 11 games for Argentina. He is on a Alan Shearer Euro 96 style dry spell. And to the extent it's reached the stage, superstition is taking over. And so it's at this point he shaves his beard and moustache off in an attempt to change his fortunes. We may never know the extent to which that worked, but we can't prove that it didn't work because of what comes. But Jamie, you think is there something in that shift of playing the games outside Buenos Aires?
Yeah, it's like you said, it takes them out of the capital and everything that's going on in the capital, and it gets the Argentinians closer to the fans outside the capital. And I think it has a positive effect on the players because they are playing their games outside where they would normally play them. And it's a slightly different atmosphere, it's a slightly different ground, and there's a different feel about it. And I think it kind of gives the Argentinians that boost that they're seeing this tournament through the lens of football fans outside Buenos Aires, where a lot more of the football is going on.
A couple of other things sort of happened by this stage. I think it's the France-Hungary game where both sides turn up in white shirts.
Yeah, so basically, Hungary and France are wearing the same kit colour. They're both wearing their away kit, which is white. Hungary normally playing red, France are playing blue, as we know. And they only notice that they're both playing in white shirts when they go out for the warm-up, literally moments before the game's supposed to kick off. And it's a bit of a mix-up because FIFA had sent letters prior to the game to both the Hungarian French Football Association to say, Hungary, you need to turn up in red. France, you need to turn up in blue. And then they sent letters out again, and there was a mix-up, and the French didn't get the letter, and so they turned up in their white kit. So the French turned up in white, Hungarians in red, French in white, and the French then got a second letter saying, no, turn up in blue. We're switching it around, but they don't get the second letter. So they're both wearing white shirts. So therefore, the referee deems, I cannot let this contest continue unless you put something else on. And, I don't think they had the bibs in the bag. But what they did have, luckily, one of the local teams, Atletico Kimberley, had a kit, a green and white kit, striped shirt, and they were very happy to lend the French national team their kit so they could play in the local colours of Atletico Kimberley, which it looks quite spectacular. When you look back at the footage now, and you see France playing in green and white stripes with these blue shorts, it really is quite spectacular.
That is fantastic.
I love it. It's the most stylistic country and team in the world that I think has produced possibly the biggest kit horror show. Red socks, blue shorts, green and white striped shirts.
It really is straight out the Jean-Paul Gaultier catalogue, isn't it? It's just everything's a complete shambles about what they're wearing. But yeah, it's not the first time it's happened. You remember on this podcast, we had the great Mario on talking about Tottenham and their challenge for the treble in 1986-87. Well, Tottenham themselves had to end up playing in Coventry City's away kit in December because there was a mix-up with the kit man then. And Coventry City have history because in 1997... Chelsea also had a mix-up and ended up playing in Coventry City's away kit. So there's something in Coventry City there that forces top-tier football teams to play in their away kit. But this is definitely the best kit faux pas at a World Cup.
That's a thing of beauty. It's another topic we have previously mentioned, but no mention of the Argentina 1978 World Cup squad can go by without mentioning the numbering system, which again is a thing of beauty and allows us to have an outfield player wearing the number 1 shirt.
Roberto Alonso.
Yeah, have a look down the list. Fantastic. If you look down the list, there's a theme, and you can see why they've numbered.
I know exactly what the theme is. I'm just impressed that they've sat there, and the goalkeeper's number 5.
Which is the thing of beauty. Yes, they do the squad in alphabetical order. Hence, Ozzy Ardiles has number 2, Alonso number 1. Incredibly, as luck would have it, Mario Kempes, who goes on to become the star of this tournament, the star striker, alphabetically out of the squad of 22 gets to wear 10, and that feels like surely that is a sign that he is going to be the star of that tournament.
I personally thought the sign was, if you do that again, I may have to award a penalty. That personally was more of a sign than even the number 10.
We should probably talk about a couple of the other players in this Argentina side who are worth picking out. Now, Ozzy Ardiles is obviously one. He was something of a favourite of Manetti's, wasn't he?
Yeah, Manetti was a big fan of Ardiles, but lots of people are big fans of Ardiles, and it's for obvious reasons. He's an absolute Rolls Royce of a football player. We were lucky enough growing up in the 1980s to see him play in English football, and he played in English football for quite some time for the great Tottenham Hotspurs, and he won a couple of cups with them. But he was just a wonderful number 8, would glide past players. He made the game look simple. He had grace. He had poise. He was just a very stylish player, but he also did the hard stuff without making it look hard. He'd do the dirty stuff without making it look dirty. And he was the perfect kind of midfield partner or they played in a 3, actually. Manetti played a 4-3-3, one of the first teams to do it, along with when the Dutch were doing it, with Kempes, who was an attacking midfielder himself. He was the one that would be coming and breaking through from the middle, and then they had Rennie Houseman in there as well, supporting with Ardiles. So the whole midfield was complemented really well in terms of everything that Menotti wanted it to do.
We should also, I think, talk about Daniel Passarella, who was Argentina's captain, their centre-back, and something of an amazing goal-scoring centre-back. So, Shane, there's going to be a test for you in a minute, and for me, I dare say, as we try and think of any other defender who has scored as many goals as Daniel Passarella. But he had a pretty incredible record, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he's got something like about 175, 180 goals in his career as a central defender, which is outstanding. There's lots of strikers that don't get anywhere near that number. I think there's lots of strikers in the current Manchester United team that are never going to get anywhere near that number as well in their careers.
The entirety of the Manchester United team at the moment won't get actually near there.
I totally agree. But yeah, I mean, 175 goals, give or take, is incredible. And he is one of a rare breed. There have been a few down the years. And if you want a quiz question, I think there's only one other defender that scored more goals than Daniel Passarella in his career. And can you possibly guess who that player is?
More than Passarella's scored.
Mm.
Yeah, one player I think has outscored Daniel Passarella as a goal-scoring defender.
So, hold on. So, someone like Frank Leboeuf, because he played as a striker for a couple of years as well. And that could be cheating.
I think you're in the right zone of the year. I should say I believe I know the answer to this through my research. So I won't...
Do they have to have played central defence for their entire career?
I would say yes.
Okay.
You can't have Chris Sutton in there or Paul Warhurst
or Lothar Matthäus.
Yeah,
Matthäus. Fantastic shout. Yeah.
John Walk, who we were talking about on the Ipswich podcast yesterday. Last week. John Walk. Definitely last week and not yesterday. John Walk ended his career as a centre-back and played a lot of games as centre-back for Ipswich, but probably scored more goals than anyone.
Well, ironically, if you're going to have someone who end up playing at centre-back, Dion Dublin played centre-back for the years at the end, and he started as a striker, didn't he? So he would have banged in an absolute ton.
Yeah, this player definitely played central defender. And to give you a clue, Shane, and this is really going to be a test of your English football knowledge, Graham Taylor has some sense of affinity with him. And if I was to say, linesman, he's going to hit it. Linesman. That may give you a clue as to who this goal-scoring defender is.
It might be as helpful as the World Cup 78 theme tune.
Yes, I think it's about as helpful as that, as the World Cup 78 theme tune. Right, who is... Put me out of my misery. I've thrown about 9 people that played centre-back at different times and did...
It's a Dutch player, and it is a player. He had a brother as well. Did he have a brother, or was it just...
Yeah,
no,
Erwin.
Ronald Koeman.
Yeah. Who, Shane, you covered...
No way!
Who you covered with the great Ajax team when we looked at them, you know.
Ronald Koeman scored that many goals, did he?
He did, yes. 250-odd goals.
And he was a sweeper for most of his career.
Yeah.
What the hell was he doing? I mean, he did have a cannon of a foot. I mean, he beat the thing up hard. He smashed the ball hard.
He must have taken. He took penalties to Koeman, and he would have taken free kicks.
Penalties,
which
Clearly
Yes,
free
Passarella.
kicks.
Passarella did as well. Yeah, definitely free kicks. Remember the free kicks. Passarella, who was actually relatively small, actually for a centre back, was also an unbelievable headerer and got a lot of goals from corners. But you don't really remember Koeman. I mean, you could see someone like Van Dijk getting his share of goals from corners each season, but I don't really remember Koeman arriving in the box as a figure. But maybe he got a few from there.
I was actually thinking of penalty takers, and I couldn't think of defenders in the period that were great penalty takers that I could think of.
The bit that is a bit odd is that both Passarella and Koeman took free kicks, and I can't really think in the modern era you do have fullbacks who take free kicks. Quite a lot of those. I'm struggling to think of another centre back.
Free kicks from a centre back.
It's a good question.
I'm struggling to think of too many centre backs who would be trusted with the ball now. It seems unlikely, doesn't it?
Thinking back to the great teams, I can't think of any. You know, if you think of all the great French sides, even the great Spanish sides, they had players that were always going to get the free kicks ahead of the centre back, even if they were good ball playing centre backs. I can't think of any.
No.
So I've done the classic Google cheat because it was bugging me. There is one obvious one in the modern game. David Luiz.
Yes.
He did like to take a free kick. I don't think he was particularly good at them, but he did like to take them.
Yeah, that's a great shout.
Yeah.
Well, I cheated. We can cut that cheating out and just make me sound really clever.
Yeah. So Passarella is captain, quite young at the time actually, and a real leader for Argentina in this. And actually, what I've seen sort of described of him is that there was an element of ratting, the classic Argentinian hard man. I suppose with this Argentina side, you do have, because you not only do have this kind of great battle between good and bad of what's happening in Argentina, but you've also got these two different footballing styles, and you have this historic Argentina style, which has been probably pretty robust in the way they played football. And, Manetti is certainly moving them towards a more entertaining style of football. Does that sound fair, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very physical World Cup. I mean, angels with dirty faces, Argentina. So Manetti definitely wants to play an attacking, progressive game, and he's one of the first coaches to play a high line, a high defensive line. But I mean, Argentina give as good as they take, and they give as good as they take in this World Cup. It's incredibly physical. I mean, there are elbows and high feet flying around. There's some real solid tackles going in. What's really strange with the officiating at the time is that the referees seem to be okay with the physical tackles. They're barely giving fouls, let alone any yellow cards or red cards for what would easily be a red or yellow card offence now. But any protesting, suddenly the officials are getting the cards out. I mean, what could be influencing the referees?
Just going back there again. We get to the second round, which begins Argentina. So they're drawn in a group with Brazil, Poland, and Peru. Poland, they start off with a 2-0 win. This is where Kempes, going back to his Rosario roots, comes to the party. He gets the 2 goals in this game. I think actually he plays slightly further forward. I think Luque might be injured in this game, so he plays fractionally further forward, but it means he breaks his duck. They get a 2-0 win there. I suppose the sequence in these games becomes quite interesting. So Brazil have beaten Peru 3-0. Poland beat Peru. Argentina draw with Brazil in that next game, 0-0. Brazil beat Poland 3-1, and then this sets us up for what has to happen in the Peru game. Anything else notable in that group?
Just before we unlock the cage and let Shane out, I think just to flesh out a few details. Yeah, Argentina do beat Poland in the first game 2-0. Poland have qualified as winners in a group that contained the Netherlands. So it's a pretty good Poland team. And we know that because we've covered the 74 version, and a lot of the 74 version is still around in 78. 1-0, Gregory Lato has a header into an open goal, essentially because the keeper's out of position. And the only player that's able to prevent it would be Mario Kempes. But Mario Kempes is unable to prevent it with any other part of his body other than his hand. So the Luis Suarez moment happens in that particular game at 1-0. Kempes makes a fantastic diving save. The referee awards a penalty and Kempes doesn't get booked. And he doesn't get booked because this was a time where the handball, the deliberate handball, was not a yellow card offence. That rule didn't come into football till 1992. And this handball comes back and is a feature in the World Cup as it progresses. Argentina go on, they win the game 2-0. They then face Brazil. And basically the winners of this game is going to win the group. That's almost set. And Brazil fancy their chances. It's a very physical battle. And in the game, one of the Brazilian players, where the ball's being knocked over the top, I think for Luque or one of the Argentinian players to run onto, deliberately jumps and handles the ball. And it's a free kick, but there's no yellow card. So the punishment is quite light for deliberate handball. That's quite significant for when we come back into the final. It is worth pointing out. But that kind of sets it up. And what's happened is FIFA, for all of the right reasons, because this is in the days before the games were played at the same time, they need to get tickets. They need to get sales. So the only way they can guarantee sales is if they put the Argentinians in the evening. So they become the final game. So they let all the other games play out and the Argentinians play the final match of whatever that day would be. And this is what happens with the Peruvian game. They know that they have to go into that particular game and win by a particular score. But I just want to stress, this is no different to the 74 World Cup. This is no different to the 66 World Cup. Both West Germany, Mexico in 70, England in 66, all played second. So that advantage has been baked into FIFA's scheduling way before the 1978 World Cup.
It makes things clear what has to be achieved. And I think in anything like this, what brings that extra level of entertainment about it is if they just needed to win by one goal, you're going to be aware of it. That's what they play. It's that they have to win by 4 goals that sets it up so beautifully. Now, Shane, it would be fair to say, as you have flagged, this game has been subject to a bit of discussion, hasn't it?
Let's quickly defend Peru. Just quickly. They had been, for the year or two beforehand, spanked by Argentina most of the games, or lost to Argentina in most of the games, including in Peru, in 3,000 feet above sea level. They've lost to Argentina. So Argentina do generally have their number going into the World Cup. So let's start with that. Now for the flip side. Before we even get onto the footy pitch, where most World Cup games are won or lost, what was more fascinating was that the Argentinian government, just before the game, in the lead up to the game, had shipped 35,000 tonnes of grain to Peru. The Central Argentinian Bank released 50 million in frozen Peruvian assets. And this one is more enjoyable than even those two. General Videla visited the Peruvian dressing room ahead of the game. Now,
it's the start of the game.
If a dictator popped in, it might influence.
No, but not only that, and this is where, let's not just stop there at the headlines. I think let's start picking those things apart. But the stuff keeps getting weirder because not only has George Videla visited the Peruvian national team, and he hasn't gone to any national changing room in the whole course of this World Cup, not even his own Argentinians. He brings along with him Henry Kissinger. Now, what the feck is Henry Kissinger doing in the Peruvian dressing room minutes before they go on to play this crucial World Cup game?
It's 3 of the greatest events leading up to something. I mean, normally where there's smoke, there's fire. My God. I mean, you couldn't write about how wonderful that is. Do you know what I mean? No intimidation. I mean, that's not intimidating, is it? Oh, yeah, the violent dictator just wants to wish you guys a good luck. Yeah, of course he does. Of course he does. There's no rumours. There's no rumours of people going missing literally around the corner. Around the corner. I mean, come on. You know, how Peru didn't lose 10-0, I don't know.
Definitely. So, Jamie, Shane said Peru have a bad record against Argentina, but what were Peru like at the time? Were they a side who should be getting beaten 6-0?
Well, Shane's absolutely right. They've played Argentina, I think, 4 times in the lead up from 1975 to this game, and they've lost every single one. They've lost it by a margin of 2 or 3 goals in most cases. But they are the current Copa America, the South American champions. They won that in 75. They are a team full of stars. They have drawn with the Netherlands in the group, and they've topped the group in this particular tournament. But their form is indifferent. In the 3 years leading up to this particular game, they've played 32 games. They've won 12. They've lost 12. They've drawn 8. Never once in that sequence of games have they conceded more than 3 goals in any single game, though. And they have played teams like Brazil, Argentina, as we mentioned, and Poland. So statistically, it's weighted to say that Argentina at home in a game they have to win are going to win. But to win it by 6 when they need 4 does seem to be a little bit out of the norm in context to the form of both teams going into this game.
What a lovely way of putting it. A little out of the norm.
Peru, their race is run, isn't it? They can't qualify at this stage, so
they're out.
As a result of that, if they can't qualify, why risk your life?
Yeah, I have to say that might. I mean, this is a sort of semi disputed, isn't it? I mean, no one can really get to the bottom of exactly what it is. That everything is pretty circumstantial. I mean, definitely. I mean, some of the circumstances do seem a bit odd, but it's interesting. When you watch the footage, it's not obvious that the Peruvians are throwing the ball in their own net, is it? I mean, and in fact, Peru almost take the lead. Yeah, they do. In the first 15 minutes, they have 2 pretty decent chances, and everything on the surface looks pretty normal. But it's worth pointing out that the coach has made some significant changes. There's 3 changes. There's players that haven't featured in the World Cup up until this point that are playing in this particular match. Now, it could be because the coach sees it as a dead rubber. They're out in terms of from a Peruvian perspective, and he wants to give some game time to players that haven't featured. So that's perfectly rational, perfectly reasonable to explain why the coach has made those changes. But there are, and obviously this followed after the 78 World Cup, there are players where suspicion sticks. One of those players wasn't awarded a contract with an Argentinian football team. He only played 3 games and then he picked up his check and he was gone shortly after this. And as Shane has mentioned, Peru was producing a lot of food of its own at this particular moment. For those who've been to Peru, and I think you guys have both been, they produce a lot of potatoes. They are a pretty good country at producing food. They didn't need the food parcel that Shane mentioned, the 30,000 tons of food that was dispatched with absolutely no need to refund it back to Argentina. So we can understand why people are suspicious about this result.
I mean, the release of debt from the central bank's probably punchier than I think the grain.
Yes.
And punchier than that would be an amazing dictator strolling into your dressing room. Even if someone said to me there was no bribery, I do not care if a dictator from the opposition stroll into your dressing room. If that doesn't affect the way you play football, I don't know what does.
I think in the history of football, it's got to be one of the most bizarre things that's ever happened. But Videla in the changing room as well I think players have gone on record saying he was terrifying. He was absolutely terrified. So, if they had put their shorts on, they were probably having to change new pairs of shorts after the visit. And I think he calmly reads a letter from the Peruvian leader at the time, I think another dictator, about the interests of Latin America brotherhood, which I think is brilliant because the whole idea is to screw Brazil, which the last time I checked was in Latin America. I mean, Latin American brotherhood.
In fairness, it's not the most bizarre halftime visit. I think I've mentioned before that Dean Saunders tells a story when he was at Aston Villa. One of the things Ron Atkinson did at halftime, they were losing, and at halftime he just brought Renee from Renee and Renata down, a one-off. put on Hit Wonder, I think a Villa fan, potentially, into the changing room, and he just sang Nessun Dorma to the players at half time. And then when he finished, Ronaldo said, "That's what you call passion. Now get out there." That, Henry Kissinger and General Vidal, maybe it isn't quite so odd.
I think for balance, Graham, it's probably fair to say on the Henry Kissinger thing, from most accounts that I've read and seen, he was a massive football fan, and in particular, like all of us, a big World Cup football fan, to the extent that he would make sure that his diary was clear for the 4 weeks in June and July when the tournament was taking place, so he could watch as much as the World Cup as we all like watching. We all love the 3-game day. It's always the first week of the World Cup is always the most exciting when you've got game after game after game. So Kissinger was a fan of the World Cup. However, to be in a changing room before a crucial game, as I said, what the feck.
Argentina win that game 6-0. There's 2 more goals for Mario Kempes, who is on fire.
On fire by this stage.
And so Argentina seal their place in the final. And the Netherlands, I suppose, are the bright or orange light of this tournament, aren't they? So this is a team, if not remembered as fondly as the 74 side that gets to a final and fails to win, but still has that hallmark of Dutch football. They don't have Cruyff, but it's still a pretty strong Dutch side, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a brilliant side. They're managed by Ernst Happel, the great Austrian, who's had a very solid career in the Netherlands as a coach, won the European Cup with Feyenoord, beating Celtic in the final in 1970, and they've still got some incredible players. The late great, as it is now, Neeskens, Ari Hahn, who scores an absolute screamer against Italy. In fact, I mean, just look at the 1978 goals. Shane, if you want, look at the 1978 goals right now. They're absolutely screamers. I mean, most of the goals are outside the area. They're just bullets. So there was something in the air. I think it's because the pitches are so bad. They probably decided that they didn't want to tread into the penalty boxes because the pitches are in such poor condition. And they've got Rob Rezenbrink as well playing for the Dutch team. He finishes up with 5 goals in the tournament and probably comes a lick of paint from being the hero for the Netherlands in the final.
So certainly that final, which really does, if you were a Hollywood scriptwriter shortly before you were pitching the idea for Escape to Victory, if you were trying to pitch something of good versus evil, of a light v dark battle, if you decided you were casting Argentina in the role of the baddies, then Holland are definitely the team you would cast as the goodies. It plays on so many levels, and as you get into the final itself and the build up to the final and everything about it, they kind of play up to this element. So there's a few shenanigans ahead of the game, aren't there?
They're turning up 5 minutes late after the audience has gone nuts. That's fantastic. The plaster cast on Rene van der Kerkhoff's arm. I mean, problem isn't like stuff like that's gamemanship, isn't it? You know what I mean? That's old school gamesmanship. I wouldn't call that cheating. I'd call that gamesmanship.
I totally agree.
Things like the fact that the complaint was upheld when it was never an issue previously makes it look worse, doesn't it? That to me is where it goes bad. The fact you go, hold on, his plaster cast wasn't a problem before, and now all of a sudden it is. It's a final in front of 72,000 people in a lynch mob about to take out your family again. To be fair, even though you'd paint the Argentinians as the bad guys, I would sit there and say, in hindsight, you want them to win. With the pain that they're going through, with the dictatorship under rule, they're kind of seen as the bad guys, but they're the bad guys. You go, just help them, mate. Let them win, mate. You know what I mean? For the bigger picture, let the damn people win. If they didn't win, how bad would it be?
Yeah. And
I totally agree. I don't see the Argentinian players and the coach Menotti as the bad guys at all in this. I think they're the heroes, to be honest, in terms of. And I know what you're doing, Graham, and it's not to be critical. I like the pitch because there's a lot of bad Argentinian stuff going on. But I think it's fair to say that the players are not part of that, and they're an extension of the people. And Menotti himself has been quoted as saying that, he won the World Cup for the people of Argentina, and that was important to him. And the players are just doing their job. But the shenanigans start way before the plaster cast, and the Argentinians coming out 5 minutes after the Dutch have been out. And I agree with you, Shen. I think that's just pure and simple gamemanship. I think it's, as I learned from Andrew in one of our recent podcasts, it's shithousery, apparently. So, which is something I enjoyed learning at the time. It's nice to know it's been around this long. But the Dutch are given a bit of a tour of Buenos Aires to get to the stadium as well. They don't take the direct route. It's a bit like, I don't know if you've seen it, it's one of my favorite films of this time of year as well. It was Planes, Trains and Automobile, where the plane has been diverted and Steve Martin's character has to get a cab, and John Candy offers.
So I remember this part. I have forgotten this bit. Yes, it's brilliant.
Yeah, so and Steve Martin's saying, "How long is it going to be? We should have been there ages ago." And John Candy's justifying it. It's like he's proud of his town. It's not many people that want to show off their town, even though there's an underhanded reason why he's doing it. I kind of think that's what was happening with the Netherlands team bus on the way to Buenos Aires. They were getting the guided tour, but they shouldn't have been getting the guided tour. That
takes the shithousery to a new level, though, doesn't it?
It does, and it's worth exploring that further. But the Argentinians also request to change the referee before the game as well. The scheduled referee does not end up refereeing the final because the Argentinians object and they bring a different referee in. I think Robert Wirtz, which is a change. I guess that happens in FIFA parlance, but why would you be wanting to change the referee to bring in a specific referee? Again, it just gives you the whole kind of raised eyebrow. What is really going on here?
I think we've raised our eyebrows high enough that it's pretty much off our head by this stage. It's I think if you throw all of this together, you'd be pretty confident that it's a questionable World Cup.
The final itself, though, as a spectacle, is just unbelievably iconic. The ticker tape, it makes, the ticker tape is still there on the pitch in extra time as the goals are going in. It is unbelievable. The other thing, which is definitely worth highlighting throughout this tournament, but it's very notable in those last goals in the final there, that the goalposts have these black lines at the bottom of the posts, which is very, very odd. And there is, I don't know if it's the validity of the story or how much of this is apocryphal, but the suggestion is that the stripes actually represented black armbands as a protest and a tribute to the missing in Argentina at the time. Now, this feels unlikely to me. I mean, I love it as a story. The Guardian did a piece on this a few years ago, and I've read a bit of the feedback on it saying, no. But it's difficult to know why you would paint a black. So it's if you watch any of the footage, and you can watch the footage when you see, particularly in the final, when you see Mario Kempes bundle that ball over the line. But those goalposts have, at the bottom of them, they have a black circle reminiscent of an armband. The black armband protest, I just feel so unlikely because I think someone from the military junta might be asking, why have we got the black armband, these black lines there? But it is difficult to think of any other reason you would have. Have you ever come across goalposts with a black circle at the bottom of them?
No, I mean, as you know from my time on the Old Dell, where we did Southampton podcasts, I've seen these strange kind of narrow, pointy goalposts, but no, not the black armbands. I think the theory stacks up, but again, it's just another one of the things to add into our very, very big and overflowing cauldron of speculation going on in this particular World Cup. It's just yet another piece of information we're unable to substantiate. And as you said, people have varying views on whether they were there to mark the disappearing people, the people that sadly have been taken, tortured, some within meters of the Monumental Stadium where the football matches were going on, and Argentina were winning this World Cup. It's really hard to say whether they were or not. But I agree with you, Graham. Who would be brave enough to do that in Buenos Aires when you've got this nutcase going to every game, and who would be brave enough to explain to him? Then they're not there as a protest. That's FIFA goalposts. Yeah, that's how FIFA like to do their goalposts.
Here's another one as well. So on the Dutch side, Cruyff's just had a home invasion in Barcelona, and the potential of a kidnapping. You're now in the kidnapping capital of South America as it stands. Do you want to win this game?
Yeah, I think the Dutch do. We've been to the Netherlands together, Shane. We know that the Dutch are a confident, dare I say, arrogant, but very highly respected race of people. They're strong-willed, they're strong-minded, and they're carrying the baggage from 74 when they were the best team at that World Cup and they failed to win. So I think, I mean, it's a brilliant question, and I don't know the answer, but I think the Dutch want to win this, and we see that in the very last moment.
Their post comments, a lot of the players, I mean, you can tell you want to win it if you're kicking off about the injustices in the game, but there's got to be a couple of Dutch players who are sitting there going, geez, aren't we glad we didn't win? I mean, nothing personal, mate. Your life's worth more than a game of footy.
They may have taken a leaf out of the referee's book who refereed the 1930 World Cup final, Argentina and Uruguay, where he was on the first boat out after the final whistle. He was jumping on the boat back to Belgium. So they could have had their aircraft ready to get out of there as soon as possible.
So the game itself there's a lot of theatre about the game with the ticker tape and everything. The game itself maybe is... I mean, it's not classic, is it? But Argentina take the lead through Kempes. Holland equalised in the second half. It all gets decided in extra time. But there is, Holland are within the width goalpost of nicking it, aren't they?
Yeah, they are in the 90th minute. As I mentioned, Rezenbrink is through. He moves the ball past the goalkeeper. It looks like it's rolling into an empty net, but it hits the post and it rebounds out. And it finishes 1-1, and the game goes into extra time.
Kempes gets his second of the game, and it is really bundled in.
Brilliant goal! It's such a brilliant goal.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I like that. I do like the moment where it ball's basically kind of hanging on by the goal line, ready to be touched over. You've got about two defenders, and Kempes all. Almost from a mini standing start, suddenly this realisation, almost cartoon-like. Oh, there it is. And they all, from all directions, come in to try and nudge it over the line.
It's a classic in, though, that it just goes into overtime in the first place. That's probably where the classic comes into it. And no one died, which is another part that I would go in with the classic.
Well, some of the tackles that were going in were pretty physical in that game.
I did watch it and go, oh, geez.
There's a lot of stuff going on. And I talked about previously the handball, the deliberate handball. On 5 occasions, the Argentinians jump up, players, on the field players, not the goalkeeper, handle the ball deliberately to prevent balls going over their heads where Dutch players, are moving into positions where they could potentially get a tackle on. 5 times that happens. And it happened against the Argentinians in the Brazilian game, where they first noticed it and they realized you're not going to get booked for it. You're just going to give away a free kick. You're going to stop play. You can disrupt the flow of play. So I think the Argentinians have learned. And I think, again, that falls into the bracket of gamesmanship. And I think Menotti has picked up on that. And I think that's what makes Menotti a genius. He's got a beautiful idea of how he wants the game and the team to be, but he's not forgetting all of the facets that are attached to football and some of the things you can do that may not be so attractive, but it allows you to win.
It's not just Menotti and Argentina who are learning things from this. The Dutch certainly take some of these lessons on board and 32 years later attempt pretty much the same tactics to stop Spain in the 2010 World Cup final without any success, it has to be said. So Holland are destined not to fulfil their destiny, this side in particular, this glorious side. So Argentina win the World Cup. They continue, a bit of a theme at that stage of host nations winning the World Cup. That is definitely a thing in those days. It is their first World Cup win.
But I think, Graham, as well, that one thing we haven't touched on, and again, it's a lot of it is circumstantial and there's no real solid evidence. Some random French guy phoning in a radio show 25 years later, giving the strong suggestion that the Argentinian players were all drugged and on amphetamines. I think there is some basis to it. There are stories that it took hours for the Argentinian players to warm down because they were so spaced out. There's a guy called Jimmy Burns who was in Argentina at the time. I think he was a BBC journalist. He wrote a book saying that, yep, all the players were dope. They were all drugged up. And my favorite piece of evidence to suggest that maybe they were drugged up, because this is in the early days when FIFA really didn't know what they were doing with drug tests. I mean, we've seen it from Willie Johnson that they'd even put labels on the bottles. So you got to pee into a bottle, but no one from FIFA was putting your name on that bottle or that tube that you were being asked to give your sample. So Argentinian players were giving samples supposedly, but there's a rumor that they weren't, and they had club attendants, water boys, helping out, give the samples to make sure that the Argentinian players were clean. One particular water boy was unable to produce the samples, so he got his girlfriend to do it for him. FIFA came back and said that one of the Argentinian players is actually pregnant. So there is the suspicion that maybe they were taking drugs, or they were at least trying to cover up that drugs were being given to the players. Now, whether the players were conscious of this, I think there's doubts, but I definitely don't think there's doubts that there was a suspicion that drugs were involved as well. We know this from the great Willie Johnson when we covered the brilliance Scotland 7018. He actually was the fall guy.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's the piece de resistance, or the icing on the cake, if you will, and what is just a beautiful story. On the bright side, based on the way FIFA generally have been, they wouldn't care anyway. Let's face it, they probably wanted Argentina to win the World Cup because it would have been fantastic for football in South America.
I think there's truth in that. I think Howie Havilanch, who was the FIFA president at the time, another scumbag. He's dead now, so I can say what I like. But yeah, he definitely wanted a South American team to win. He probably wanted Brazil to win because he was Brazilian. But I think he was quite happy for Argentina to win. And as I said, I think FIFA were very complicit in what was going on in Argentina politically at that particular moment, and they were quite happy to mix football and politics, which has always been the case.
It is at the heart of this story, and you've both touched upon it, as I've been producing my pantomime, casting Argentina as the pantomime baddies and villains. But it is very interesting how this World Cup is viewed. They obviously go and win the World Cup 8 years later with Maradona. And obviously, this unbelievable story attached to Maradona. Let's ignore that there's a shocking handball activity during the middle of it. But you have this World Cup victory that is just viewed unbelievably positively. And yet the 78 World Cup, and the players talked about this, you know, the victory is either sort of defined or marred a bit by the circumstances Argentina is in there. It takes the gloss and the edge off it, and through no fault of the players' own. And this World Cup is kind of remembered less fondly than the one they win 8 years later, which feels, I think, quite harsh on the players involved.
One thing we haven't touched on, I mentioned that, you know, the fear you'd have, like in the Peru game, when a dictator strolls into your... Imagine if you're an Argentinian player and you don't win. This is an advertisement for a country and a dictatorship, and you're not going to win. The pressure on the Argentinian players themselves, and I don't care what foul things were going on behind to potentially rig a game, the pressure on any team to sit there and have to perform would have been greater than even the opposition on taking a fall. It is tarnished because you don't know, you don't know what to believe and how even the games were. But my God, as I said, the Argentinian players, they would have been under a stupid amount of pressure just from the public, but let alone, you know, I'm pretty sure they would have all been reminded of their duties, so to speak.
Yeah, they're kind of like damned if they do, damned if they don't, because by not winning it, they put themselves in a tricky situation with a crazy man in charge of their country. By winning it, they get the pleasure of winning the World Cup and doing it for the people. But equally, they're promoting this right-wing government, which does benefit from the victory.
And
goes
the
on
question
to...
whether they win it legitimately. I mean, no matter what you do, you're kind of losing, aren't you? It's just...
Yeah, I guess our job, though, is to rank the football team, but it's impossible to rank this football team without the circus that's going on around it. It's just absolutely impossible.
We should get to ranking them, but we should also just quickly touch on legacy. There's plenty of it. Argentina has a fantastic football legacy internationally. This goes on now, won 3 World Cups. How many World Cups and finals?
Yeah, they don't defend in 82 really well. Maradona is playing, and his tournament's cut short when he gets sent off against Brazil in the second group stage, another weird format that FIFA have. They win it in 86, Maradona. They get to the final in 90. And in 2006, they really start to motor on. This is the Messi era where they become a dominating factor in international football. So they finally win their third in Qatar, a country that has no controversy attached to it whatsoever with FIFA.
There's also a very special story around Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa. Ozzy Ardiles, kind of a fundamental member of the team. Villa was in the squad. I'm not sure he played. They become... I mean, they're essentially the first imports on. It must be... They come in a year before Murin and Tyson, who we talked about last week. And it's off the back of this World Cup, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 things happen. Obviously, they've got the profile of playing for Argentina and getting to the final, Adidas in particular. But the rules have changed. In 1978, the European Union, the EEC, changed workers' rights, and it became difficult for football to stop. It became difficult for English football, I should say, to stop foreign imports coming in and doing a job, playing football in the country of which clubs were buying them. So, yeah, this is really the birth of when we start seeing the introduction of foreign players into the English game. But that doesn't really take shape until the mid-1990s, when the Premier League really starts to become the force of nature that it's now become.
Ardiles and Villa go on to play for Spurs, as almost does Mario Kempes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did he? That's fantastic.
So Mario
I didn't know
Kempes, at the start of the 1984 season, he has a 2-match trial at Spurs. And the legacy of Mario Kempes is quite incredible. So Kempes goes on to play in the 1982 World Cup as well. So Kempes, you remember, goes 11 games without scoring and then scores 6 goals in 3 games. He wins the Golden Boot. They are his last international goals. He plays 12 more games for Argentina and doesn't score in any of them. So his legacy, it turns out to be not quite as long-lasting. Ardiles and Villa aren't the only ones. Alberto Tarantino, I think, joins Birmingham in 78 as well. So some of these Argentinians go on to play internationally across the board. We should get round to ranking this team's greatness. As a reminder, we've got 5 categories of greatness. All-time greats, the top true greats, are middle of the road category. Touch of greatness, below that edge of greatness, link of greats. Jamie?
Yeah, so we've got dictators, we've got politics, we've got smoking managers, we've got Bobby pitches, great goals, ticker tape, and short shorts. Where do we go with this? I think the question for me, first and foremost, is not where do we rank the greatness of this particular Argentina team. It's like, did this Argentina team get some support, and was this World Cup rigged in their favour? And I think the answer to that question is definitely a maybe. Not to be on the Oasis bandwagon right now. And I think what it does, it creates a category in my head to rank them as in the new doubt of greatness bracket. I don't think that's going to work right now. So I think the players genuinely played their part in this, and I don't think they were aligned to the crap that was going on in Argentina. I think Menotti definitely played this one for the people, and we know that he was a bit of a left-wing liberal who chain smoked and didn't like what was going on in Argentina. So I have no doubt in my mind that the players were honest in all of this. So they deserved their their credit, but they were getting some assists off the pitch without any doubt. So I'm struggling. I can't put them in the top. I can't even put them in the second because of the doubts, and I'm struggling even to kind of put them in a touch of greatness. It's almost like where there's doubt, I'm on the edge, and so I'm going to have to. I can't believe I'm saying this amazing collection of footballers and this genius coach. I'm going to kick off and put them in the fourth tier, edge of greatness. Oh, I feel dirty.
Shane.
Touch of greatness for me.
Yeah.
Touch of greatness. There's too many good players with good careers in there to put them too low. I think the World Cup was rigged to a degree. Well, you can't rig it 100%, but I would say there was enough outside assistance to help them achieve their goal. Having said that, though, I don't blame the players for that, and I think the pressure on the players internally would have been horrible, and that itself makes it a touch of greatness just to go through that kind of crap. Touch of greatness for me.
Yeah, I'm not having edge of greatness. That's just bizarre. I mean, there's no doubt they had home advantage. All teams benefit from home advantage, and this definitely seems like there was more home advantage than usual. To your point, Shane, the pressure is on them to perform in those crunch moments. They do perform. It is, I think, sad that large parts of their achievements are lost in the backdrop to it, but equally it's just an incredible story, and it is an incredible World Cup for better for us. And it's obviously easier to say that with 40 years plus hindsight.
And do you think that there is an untapped market for some tourist company out in Argentina sitting there giving bus tours of what the Dutch had to go through to get to the stadium? Because I reckon that's well one hop-off bus tour and just sit there and go, how did we go via Sao Paulo? That's not even in Argentina.
I think I'm gonna pull rank on Jamie there, and I think we say Argentina 1978, touch of greatness. Excellent, good stuff, Shane. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on once again, gentlemen. Again, I really don't know how many more car crashes you can pull out of the archives, but it is always fun to be involved in one. And you have pulled out some beauty.
There are more.
It might be
there are more, Shane. Yeah, I fear this isn't your last appearance. I think we're going to get you back. There are more. Although this one will take some topping, I think. So the work's there for us. Graham, we haven't mentioned one thing which I think is worth mentioning, and we kind of touched on it briefly last week with Adidas kits, that beautiful Ipswich Town kit. So the Adidas Three Stripes first shows itself in 1974. By the 1978 World Cup, there's 10 teams at this World Cup with the beautiful Adidas kit. And as we know, Ipswich Town were one of the early adopters, along with Birmingham and Notts Forest and QPR. But also, this World Cup is the first appearance of the very beautiful Adidas Tango football. This is the football that just absolutely styled it out from the very beginning. And it doesn't get much more beautiful than the Adidas Tango soccer ball.
The other big thing we didn't mention, I did forget in my other notable things that happened in the first round when Brazil played Sweden, that
Brilliant.
Brazil have a corner about a minute into injury time, and a Welsh referee, Clive Thomas, did like to be. He was very much the Mike Dean of his day. I think he did like a bit of the attention, but no one, I don't remember anyone grabbing attention in quite stylish fashion. Have I remembered this right, Jamie? He literally blows the whistle as the guy heads it. I mean, and he heads it in.
It's an extraordinary decision, and it was the final decision of his World Cup career because he never got another World Cup game, and he was in his prime. He was 41. It's in injury time. It's Brazil's third corner in succession in injury time. So the clock is running down. Nilinho, who's taking the corner, is messing around with the ball. He's leaving it outside the quadrant. He's not put in the right place. So I think he's just testing Thomas's patience. And so on the third attempt, Nilinho puts the ball in, and it's literally flying across where Clive Thomas turns around, blows the whistle, and as he's blowing the whistle and signalling the end of the game, Zico heads the ball into the net to win the game 2-1 for Brazil. And the Brazilians protest clearly, and Clive Thomas is, go away. I'm having none of it. None of it. Go away. I blew the whistle. Now, lads, get out of my face. I apologise to anyone in Wales listening for my poor accent there.
Oh, I didn't think it was amazingly horrible. I mean, it was...
Any story which also features and Zico headed it in, it also has another level to it, doesn't it? Excellent. Okay, we will leave it there. Shane, thank you again.
Thank you, gentlemen. A joy as per usual.
Jamie, thank you as always.
Thanks straight back to you, Graham. And again, thank you, Shane. It's always good to have your element of excitement in these particular episodes.
That's it for this week. We'll be back next time, barring a Clive Thomas whistle being blown before we complete it, with the incredible Doncaster Bells.